Hey there, welcome to Freefromhate's podcast. This is your host, Jason Downard, and I'm a former neo-Nazi skinhead out of the Portland, Oregon area. What am I going to do is I'm going to go into my story about how I became a neo-Nazi and how I left the movement. But before I start all that, I want to go in and talk about my childhood, what led up to these events that sent me down that road to become to hate other people just because of the color of their skin. Well, growing up wasn't easy for me. I didn't have my parents growing up. I didn't have any of that. I was taken away from my parents when I was the age of 2 due to their drug addiction, and so I was sent to foster care. And when I went to foster care, I went with my aunt and uncle on my mom's side. Yes, it was blood related, but it wasn't the ideal place to be. They had 7 kids of their own. It was a rough situation trying to growing up with them. Life wasn't easy for me growing up in a family that already had kids of their own, and they treated them better than they treated me. And just so you know, like, my aunt and uncle was getting paid monthly just to take care of me, just to put a roof over my head, me going to school, stuff like that. But that income that was coming in was supposed to go to me and help me out financially, like getting school clothing or whatever I needed. But I'd never seen any of that. The clothing that I would wear to school was hand-me-down clothing from my cousins. And so anger started growing at an early age. I'd say probably like 8, 9 years old. I started resenting living there. You know, I'd always tell my aunt and uncle, I just want to know my parents, and why didn't I have my parents or anything like that. As I got older, I started to experiment with drugs and like smoking weed. At the age of 13, I tried meth for the first time and was addicted to it. It was a way out of life, a way out of coping with what's going on in my world and what's going on at home. But I started to get involved in the streets, gang activities, and running the streets, selling drugs. Sorry, my story is kind of hard to tell, even though I've told it 100 times, but it never gets easier to tell. I would run the streets because, you know, the only thing I ever wanted in life was my parents. You know, I wanted somebody to be there to love me and support me and love me unconditionally, but I wasn't getting that at the house that I was living at. Living with my aunt and uncle and all the kids that I was living with. You know, I was always the outcast child. I was always the one that did wrong in their eyes. You know, I'd get out of school, come home, have to do all the chores, everything around the house for the whole entire family. Even that wasn't good enough. Their kids didn't have to do anything. I had to do all the chores. I felt used and abandoned, didn't feel loved. And if you really think about it, that's what every kid wants is somebody to love them. Even humans, just humans in general, they want somebody to love them. And I didn't find that. So I chose the streets. I turned to the streets. I found people like my friends and stuff that were involved in gangs, but they showed me love and support, and I reached out to it and got involved in things that I shouldn't have gotten involved in. But I didn't think of the consequences until, you know, 15, 20 years later. And so as time went by, I eventually got to meet my sister and brothers on my dad's side, and I got to move out of my aunt and uncle's house into with my sister, moved from Yakima, Washington to Battleground, Washington. And so when I moved to Battleground, it was hard going to school there too, because I came from a town that was all Hispanics, and it was all ran by Hispanic gangs and stuff like that. And then I moved into an all-white community. And so I dressed different, talked different. I didn't make too many friends at first, you know, and there was only like 4 black people in this whole entire town. Them black people considered themselves that they were white, you know, so it was weird growing up in a town throughout my teenage years it was all white. And so I fought a lot just because the way I dressed and where I came from. I didn't agree with what they agreed with, you know. And so that's where I started to begin the racial divides and stuff like that, and started to to become friends with other people, I started to believe these things. I was just trying to adjust with life, just trying to fit in as a kid, as a teenager. I did these things, but as the older I got, I ended up going to prison when I was 19 years old for a drive-by shooting that I was involved in. I was facing 15 years prison time. I've been 35 years old getting out of the prison. The prosecutor came to me with a plea bargain, 4 years, which I took. Don't get me wrong, I was scared going to prison. I was scared regardless. I went to jail. I'd never been to jail in my lifetime until now, when I was 19 years old. Things are scary just even thinking about the process of, the handcuffs getting put on you. You're sitting in the back of a cop car and you're on the way to jail and you're like running through your mind like what's going to happen. Because you watch these TV shows where people get beat up, stabbed, killed, there's gangs, everything like that, and you're just like, you don't know how to adjust. I adjusted just fine when I went to county jail, but when I got sentenced and went to prison, the first people that contacted me when I was in there was the neo-Nazi skinheads. They pulled me up and befriended me and was nice and supportive and, started to talk to me about, are you proud to be white? And started thinking like, yeah, I am proud to be white. What's wrong with a white guy saying he's proud to be white when the Hispanics can say they're proud to be brown, the blacks can say they're proud to be blacks, and so on and so on. I didn't realize when a white man says they're proud to be white, it's racist. And I didn't think of this stuff when I was involved with these people. And so I started hanging out with them more and they started to breed this information inside my head. And I started to believe the things that they were telling me. That's kind of how I got recruited in. But the thing is, when you're in prison, you kind of click up with your own people and everything else. And so you learn to stick with your own people. You learn to stay to your own race. And that's what I did. And I spent 9 years in the neo-Nazi hate movement, dedicated my life to this organization that I thought was going to be there for me in the end, because everything they taught me, I taught other people when I recruited them. And, are you proud to be white? Are you proud to have your own heritage? Just stuff like that. And it just eats at me today because, I left the movement 2 years ago. It's just sad to see what's going on in the world today. This is the reason why I'm talking about my story and everything else is because we're in the era of 2018 where Donald Trump's in president, and you see the rise of the neo-Nazi movements, the hate crimes inside the United States of America with everything that he's talking about. He's talking about, let's make the borders higher, let's kick back all immigrants across the borders, let's do this, let's do that, let's make this an all-white country. This is the same thing that we were talking about when we were recruiting people in. We recruited people into, hey, don't put on the boots and braces anymore. Let's make you blend in with society and grow your hair out, get jobs in law enforcement, the government, and society, and live a normal, productive life. These were tactics and tools to try to take over the government and the world because they want an all-white nation. And you're starting to see it today. And this is the sad, scary part of this situation. Things that we were involved in, you're starting to see it today. Now what I do is I give back and talk about these things. This is a little bit about my story. I'll go into more details in the next upcoming episode. I have some guests coming on that are formers too, and they work inside the organization I am a part of. There's hundreds of us that are formers, but some of us only speak out and talk about our past and everything, and some people that we just counsel with. And this is the whole reason behind this podcast and everything, is to benefit and try to help other people out of these organizations. So if you stay tuned and feel like you want to support my podcast, feel free. There will be links to help support this. Bear with me on everything that's coming up. It'll be posted up here soon. Thank you guys. You guys have a good night.